There are two versions of you quietly walking toward age 40. One of them wakes up already tired, not just physically, but mentally. Money is always in the background of their thoughts, not loud enough to talk about, just loud enough to create a constant hum of worrying. Bills feel heavier, choices feel smaller. Every unexpected expense feels like proof that something went wrong years ago. The other version of you also wakes up with responsibilities, but their mind feels quieter. Money isn't perfect, but it's predictable. Problems feel manageable. Decisions feel flexible. When life throws something unexpected at them, it's an inconvenience, not a threat. Both versions started in the same place. Same economy, same uncertainty, same confusing advice. The difference isn't luck, it isn't talent. It isn't some secret investment trick. It's a handful of money decisions made slowly, quietly, years before anyone else noticed they mattered. Most people don't realize this until it's too late, because no one tells you that money doesn't explode at 40. It solidifies whatever habits, assumptions, and avoidance you carry through your 20s and 30s don't disappear. They harden, they lock in, and by the time you notice, the cost isn't dramatic, it's permanent. The scary part isn't being broke at 40, it's being stuck. Stuck in a job you can't leave. Stuck saying yes to things you'd rather refuse. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. You don't drift into financial stability. You drift into financial stress. Stability is built deliberately, quietly, often boringly. That's what this video is about. Not how to get rich. Not how to win money. Not how to impress anyone. It's about the 9 money moves that quietly decide whether 40 feels like freedom or like a narrowing hallway with fewer doors every year. If you're in your 20s or 30s and you've ever thought, I'll deal with this later, this is later knocking early. If you're doing okay on the surface, but still feel uneasy when you think about the future, this is for you. And if you've ever wondered whether you're accidentally setting up your future self for stress without realizing it, stay with me, because none of these mistakes feel dangerous while you're making them. They feel normal. It happens in tiny moments. Choosing comfort over clarity, avoiding numbers because they feel uncomfortable, assuming more income will fix habits that were never examined. You tell yourself you're still young, and for a while that feels true. Your 20s forgive mistakes. Your early 30s absorb them, but by 40, money stops being patient. This is when life gets louder. Responsibilities stack up. Your energy isn't infinite anymore. Your margin for error shrinks. And suddenly, money decisions you barely remember making are now controlling how much freedom you have. Not because you were irresponsible, but because no one taught you how these systems actually work together. We're taught to think about money in pieces. Income, debt, savings, spending. But your financial life doesn't work in pieces. It works like a system. Ignore one part, and the rest quietly compensates, usually in ways that cost you later. That's why so many people reach 40 confused. They didn't make one huge mistake. They made 100 small, reasonable ones. They upgraded lifestyles without upgrading intention. They treated debt as normal background noise. They assumed stress was just part of adulthood. And because none of it felt urgent, nothing changed. Until it had to. Here's the shift most people never make until they're forced to. Money isn't about numbers first. It's about behavior first. And behavior is driven by emotion, avoidance, comfort, fear, status, comparison. We don't overspend because we're bad with math. We overspend because spending feels like relief. We don't avoid saving because we don't understand it. We avoid it because it forces us to confront trade-offs. We don't carry debt because we love payments. These patterns feel harmless in the moment, but over time, they shape the direction of your life. Not dramatically, gradually, like water carving stone. By the time most people look up and ask, how did it get this tight? The answer isn't a single event. It's a decade of unexamined momentum. The goal of this video isn't to scare you. It's to slow you down just enough to see the path you're already on. Because the most powerful money decisions aren't dramatic ones. They're quiet course corrections made early. The kind your future self will never be able to thank you for properly. because they'll never feel the panic you avoided. Over the next sections, we're going to walk through 9 money moves that matter before 40. Not because 40 is special, but because it's the point where time stops doing the heavy lifting for you. Each move is simple. None are flashy. All of them compound. You don't need to do them perfectly. You just need to do them intentionally. And the sooner you understand why they matter, the more control you give yourself over the second half of your life. So take a breath. This isn't about judgment. It's about awareness. And awareness is where real change actually starts. Not the spreadsheets. Not the advice. The day-to-day experience. It usually starts with a low-level tension that never fully turns off. You check your bank account, not because you're out of money, but because you're not sure how close you are. You hesitate before opening certain apps. You mentally calculate purchases even when they're small. Not because you're disciplined, but because you're uncertain. Money isn't an emergency. It's just heavy. You tell yourself this is normal adulthood. Everyone feels this way. Everyone's tired. Everyone's stressed. So you move on. You earn money, but it disappears faster than you expect. Raises don't feel like relief. They feel like permission. A slightly better place. A slightly nicer car. A few more conveniences to make life easier. None of these feel irresponsible. They feel earned. You work hard. You're doing your best. You deserve comfort. And you do get comfort briefly. But what you don't get is space. No breathing room. No margin. No sense that things are actually getting easier. So you assume the problem is income. If I just earned a little more, that thought becomes the background soundtrack of your life. Then life adds layers. A partner, kids, family expectations, career pressure. Suddenly, money isn't just about you anymore. You're not only managing your own needs, you're absorbing other people's uncertainty too. A parent hints they might need help someday. A child needs something unexpected. A job becomes more demanding, not less. You realize how many things depend on your ability to keep earning. Miss one paycheck and things get uncomfortable. Miss a few and things get scary. But you keep moving because stopping to look too closely feels risky. This is where avoidance quietly sneaks in. You don't sit down and review everything. You don't want to know the full picture. Not because you're irresponsible, but because clarity feels like pressure. Once you see it clearly, you'll have to make choices. Cut things. Say no. Delay gratification. So you half look. You pay bills. You keep things running. You tell yourself you'll get organized soon. Soon becomes next year. Next year becomes someday. And someday quietly turns into 40. Here's the strange part. From the outside, everything looks fine. You're functioning. You're employed. You're not in crisis. But inside, there's a quiet fear you don't like to name. What if this is as stable as it gets? What if you're doing everything right, but it still feels fragile? What if one bad year could undo a decade of effort? That fear doesn't show up as panic. It shows up as exhaustion, decision fatigue, short temper. That sense that life is expensive in ways no one warned you about. Most people don't talk about this honestly. They joke about being broke. They normalize stress. They laugh off anxiety as adulthood. But underneath the humor is something real. A feeling that money is running your life more than you're running it. You don't feel in control. You feel managed by circumstances. And the worst part, you don't know which changes would actually help. Save more? Spend less? Earn more? Invest? Every piece of advice sounds right and overwhelming. So you default to what feels easiest. Keep going. This is the moment where many people unknowingly lock in their future. Not with one big mistake, but with inaction. Because time keeps passing whether you're intentional or not. Your habits keep compounding whether you examine them or not. And the version of you at 40 isn't created by what you plan to do. They're created by what you repeat. Here's what makes this especially dangerous. The consequences are delayed. You don't feel the cost of lifestyle creep immediately. You don't feel the weight of missed investing early. You don't feel the drag of debt until flexibility disappears. Everything feels manageable until suddenly it isn't. And by then, the fixes require much more effort, more stress, more sacrifice, more urgency. That's why 40 feels like a wall for so many people. Not because 40 is old, but because it's the age where financial momentum becomes obvious. You can finally see which direction you've been drifting. Some people hit this moment and feel relief. They realize they've been quietly building stability without knowing it. Others feel panic. They realize they've been surviving, not preparing. And neither group made one defining decision. They just lived differently without realizing it. If any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, that's a good sign. It means you're paying attention before you're forced to. Because the real danger isn't being behind, it's staying unclear. Clarity is uncomfortable at first, but it's the only thing that creates calm later. In the next section, hardworking people, not the math, the psychology, the invisible mental shortcuts that quietly push people toward stress without them realizing it. Once you see those clearly, the rest of the path starts to make sense. If money stress were just about intelligence or discipline, most of these problems wouldn't exist, but they do everywhere. Smart people feel behind. Hardworking people feel trapped. Responsible people still feel anxious. That tells us something important. The issue isn't knowledge. It's how the human brain reacts to money. Money doesn't live in the logical part of your mind. It lives in the emotional one. Let's start with a simple truth. Your brain is not designed to care about future you. It cares about current you. Today's stress, today's desires, today's discomfort. Future consequences feel abstract. Present relief feels real. That's why spending feels easier than saving. Why delaying decisions feels safer than making them. Why later always sounds reasonable. Your brain isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do. The problem is that money punishes short-term thinking very slowly, and slow consequences are easy to ignore. Think of money like water flowing downhill. It always takes the path of least resistance. You don't wake up intending to overspend. You just choose the option that feels easiest in the moment. A subscription instead of a hard choice. A payment instead of a trade-off. A swipe instead of a pause. Each decision feels small, but your financial life isn't shaped by big moments. It's shaped by patterns, and patterns form without conscious effort. There's another mental trap at work here. A raise feels like success. A new job feels like movement, so you reward yourself. A little upgrade here, a little convenience there. Not because you're careless, but because progress feels like it should look better. The problem? Your brain adjusts fast. What felt exciting becomes normal. What felt luxurious becomes expected. The happiness fades, but the expense stays. This is why many people earn more for years without feeling more secure. They're running faster on the same treadmill. Then there's avoidance. Avoidance isn't laziness. It's self-protection. Looking closely at money forces you to confront limits. Limits on lifestyle. Limits on time. Limits on choice. So your brain nudges you away from clarity. I'll check later. I don't need to know exactly. It'll work out. Avoidance feels calm in the moment, but it quietly hands control over to inertia. And inertia always favors the status quo. People talk about budgets, not peace. Numbers, not sleep. Returns, not freedom. So money feels like a technical problem instead of a human one. But the truth is simple. People don't want wealth. They want relief. Relief from anxiety. Relief from pressure. Relief from feeling behind. When you don't connect money to emotional outcomes, motivation stays weak. You know what you should do, but you don't feel why it matters. Here's a metaphor that makes this clearer. Imagine driving a car with a foggy windshield. You can still move. You can still steer, but you're always reacting late. You brake harder. You miss turns. You feel tense even on familiar roads. That's how most people experience money. They're not reckless. They're driving without visibility. And instead of clearing the windshield, they just slow down and hope for the best. There's also a cultural story working against you. You're told that stress is normal, that debt is normal, that feeling behind is normal. So you stop questioning it. If everyone feels this way, maybe this is just adulthood. But normal doesn't mean healthy. It just means common. One of the most dangerous beliefs people carry is this. Once you see money this way, the question stops being, how much can I afford? And becomes, How much freedom does this buy me later? This is where the 9 money moves come in. Not as rules, not as pressure, but as a system for slowly building margin before life demands it. Think of these as pillars. You don't need to perfect them all at once. You just need to stop ignoring them. Not what looks good, not what's impressive. What actually makes your life feel calm and meaningful. Without this, more money just means more noise. Debt isn't just a payment. It's a promise your future self has to keep. Fewer promises mean more flexibility. This is about leverage, not indulgence. Money that does nothing except protect you. This is what turns panic into patience. Not perfectly, not aggressively, just consistently enough that growth can do its quiet work. Skills, reputation, relationships. Money flows more easily when you're hard to replace. Because it is one. Energy creates income. Health protects both. Not because you expect the worst, but because you care about the people who depend on you. This is responsibility, not fear. Awkward now, necessary later. Silence here creates emergencies later. Picture to people with similar incomes. Neither is rich, neither is reckless. One avoids decisions, upgrades grade you.